Minecraft horror story, The Wandering Slaughterer. The first village was still burning when Steve saw the red figure walk out of the wheat. He had been returning to Oak Ridge with 2 stacks of iron and a new diamond pickaxe. Smoke rose above the trees before the roofs came into view. Steve ran the last 100 blocks with his sword ready, expecting pillagers or a lava accident. He found neither. Every wooden door had been torn from its frame. The iron golem lay in pieces around the bell. Crops had been cut in straight paths, as if something broad had walked through them without changing direction. Villagers' work blocks remained in place, but the villagers were gone. There were no dropped emeralds, no food, and no experience orbs, only empty houses and fire. Then the wheat moved. A man-shaped creature stepped into the open field. Its blocky head looked burned from the inside. Red and orange patches shifted beneath black skin. Its chest was almost solid black, while the arms looked raw and wet. A curved blade hung from its right hand. It did not rush Steve. It walked across the wheat at an even pace. Steve raised his diamond sword. Stop! The creature kept coming. At 20 blocks away, every sound in the village ended. Fire stopped cracking. Wind stopped moving the leaves. Steve's hunger bar vanished. In its place appeared one red word. Run. He ran. The hunter followed him through the north gate. Steve could hear the blade scrape the path, but each time he looked back, the creature was farther away than the sound. He reached the oak forest and crossed a stream. The scraping stopped at the water. Steve hid beneath a bank until night. When he finally looked out, nothing stood behind him. He circled back toward Oak Ridge from the east, moving through trees instead of using the road. 3 survivors had gathered inside the stone chapel. Ruth, the village map maker, had blocked the entrance with a cartography table. Owen, a builder from the southern hills, held an iron axe. Kai, a hunter who supplied arrows to the settlement, watched the windows with a loaded crossbow. 8 villagers crowded the rear room behind them. Ruth pulled Steve inside. "Did it see you?" "Yes." "Then it will come back." She unrolled a map on the chapel floor. Oak Ridge sat near the western edge. 2 other settlements lay to the east. Red marks crossed both names. "What are those?" Steve asked. "Villages that went silent this week. Brookfield first, then Stone Ford. Traders came from both roads. They said every person was missing, and the doors had been pulled off." Kai glanced through a narrow window. "Stone Ford is 600 blocks east. Whatever did this was there yesterday." Steve looked back toward the field. It just walked out of Oak Ridge. Ruth placed a 3rd red mark over their home. "Then it is moving west to east." Owen shook his head. "No." Steve came from the west. It walked toward him. "Maybe it is following players, not roads." A heavy step sounded on the chapel roof. The 8 villagers began to murmur. Kai aimed upward. Another step crossed the stone slabs, then another. Dust fell onto the map. Steve moved to the side window. The roof was only 4 blocks high, but no shadow crossed the ground outside. The footsteps reached the bell tower and stopped. "The bell rang once," Ruth whispered. "It did that before the attack." "How long before?" "One night." They left Oak Ridge before dawn. Owen had built a rail line toward a trading post called Northlight, 1,800 blocks away. The track was unfinished, but it covered the first 500 blocks and crossed the thickest part of the forest. They placed the villagers in minecarts, loaded 4 chest carts with supplies, and pushed the convoy out through the eastern gate. Steve took the lead cart. Ruth rode behind him with her maps. Kai guarded the middle, and Owen pushed the final cart onto the powered rail. As they entered the trees, Steve looked back. The evil hunter stood on the chapel roof. Its arms pointed straight out, blade held level with its left hand. Behind it, Oakridge burned brighter. The track carried them east. For the first 100 blocks, the ride was smooth. Then Steve's cart slowed. The powered rails were lit, yet each cart behind him lost speed at the same point. He climbed out and found a red handprint on the rail. The print was larger than a player's hand. It covered 2 blocks. As Steve watched, the fingers closed around the track. He struck it with his sword. The red shape sank into the ground, and the rails went dark for 20 blocks in both directions. Owen replaced the broken power source. It knows where we are going. Then we change the route, Kai said. Ruth studied her map. A new red line had appeared between Oakridge and Northlight. It followed their rail exactly. The map knows too, she said. They abandoned the track at the next river. Steve broke the carts, recovered the villagers, and built oak boats. The river wound north before turning east through a swamp. It was slower, but it did not appear on Ruth's trade map. At midday, the map drew a second red line along the water. At sunset, they found a ruined camp on a small island. 4 beds stood beneath a wool roof. Chests held cooked fish, torches, and iron tools. No players were present. A sign beside the cold fire read, "If you found this, do not sleep here." Owen walked around the island. The camp is safe enough. Water on all sides. Clear view between the trees. Kai pointed to the sign. Someone disagreed. Someone also left 4 good beds. Steve opened the nearest chest. A written book lay under the food. Its first pages were filled with short entries. Day 3. We saw him behind the cows. Day 5. He was on the hill when we woke. Day 7. The eastern village is empty. Doors gone. Day 8. We moved by boat. He followed the bank without making sound. Day 9. When we sleep, he walks. Do not give him the night. The final page showed a recipe for a cross made from iron, silver, and redstone. Below it, someone had written one more warning. Conventional weapons do nothing. The cross sends him away, but it does not make him forget. Ruth checked the supply carts. We have iron and redstone, no silver. Steve remembered the pale ore beneath Oakridge. I left 12 ingots in my mine chest. Kai looked west. Going back is death. Staying without the cross may be the same. They decided not to sleep. Owen ringed the island with torches. Kai watched the western bank. Ruth kept the villagers in boats so they could leave quickly. Steve stood near the beds and read the book again. At midnight, one of the beds became occupied. No one had touched it. A shape lay under the white blanket, too long for a player. Its square head made a high lump against the pillow. Owen raised his axe. Get up. The blanket moved with a slow breath. Steve pulled it away. The bed was empty. On the white wool lay a burned player head with one coal-bright eye. Its mouth opened. Home, it said. The island torches went out. Something entered the water on the western side. Slow splashes moved toward them. Kai fired into the dark. His arrow struck wood. "Boats!" Steve shouted. They pushed off. Villagers crowded together while Ruth and Owen rowed. Steve took the last boat with Kai. Behind them, the island came back into view beneath a red light. The evil hunter stood in the center of the camp. It lifted its blade and struck the ground. Every bed broke at once. The group's spawn points vanished. Then the hunter stepped off the island and walked across the water. Its feet did not sink. Each step changed the water beneath it into a red solid block, building a path toward the boats. Kai fired again. The arrow passed through the hunter's face. Steve and Kai rowed until the oars seemed ready to break. The hunter did not run, but the red path grew behind them. 20 blocks away, 15, 10. Steve looked toward the eastern bank. A cave opened beneath hanging vines. There, the boats struck mud. Everyone jumped out and pulled the villagers into the cave. Owen blocked the entrance with stone while red blocks reached the shore. The first stone broke inward. Owen placed cobblestone behind it. That broke too. Steve led the group deeper while Owen built wall after wall. Each lasted less than a second. The cave ended at a drop into an abandoned mine shaft. They lowered the villagers in water, then removed the source block. Steve went last. As he fell, the hunter's burned head pushed through the cave wall above him. The mine shaft ran east and west. Ruth checked her map, but its whole surface had turned red except for one small white square under their feet. "It is not mapping the land anymore," she said. "It is mapping us." They chose east. Cobwebs slowed the villagers. Owen cut a path while Kai watched behind them. The hunter did not appear, but phantom footsteps followed on the beams overhead. Every few minutes the same blade scraped stone somewhere beyond the torchlight. Near dawn, they found a miner's room sealed with an iron door. Inside were 3 furnaces, a crafting table, a chest, and a ladder leading to the surface. The chest held 9 raw silver pieces. Ruth smiled for the first time that night. Enough for 2 crosses. The furnaces lit. Steve stood guard while the others smelted the ore. Outside, the scraping stopped. A new sound began inside the room. Someone was mining beneath the floor. The blocks cracked in a line toward the furnaces. Owen and Kai moved the villagers up the ladder. Ruth collected the first ingots. Steve placed obsidian over each crack, but the thing below changed direction. The floor opened beneath the chest. A burned arm reached through and pulled it down. The chest disappeared into darkness with the remaining raw silver inside. Ruth had recovered 4 ingots. She placed them with iron and redstone. 2 crosses appeared. Steve took one. Kai took the other. The iron door flew off its hinges. The evil hunter filled the doorway. Steve raised the cross. White sparks ran over its burned body, but he hesitated. The book had warned that banishment would not make it forget. He needed it close enough for the cross to work, and the curved blade was already lifting. The hunter's coal eye fixed on Steve. His legs stopped moving. Kai could still move. He stepped between them, held the second cross against the creature's chest, and fired. Lightning filled the miner's room. The hunter broke into ash and vanished. A dark glass heart fell onto the floor. Kai picked it up. One of his hearts disappeared from his health bar. The item named itself Hunter's Soul. Red text appeared in front of all 4 players. The walk continues at sunset. They climbed to the surface into morning rain. The ladder opened on a plain covered with blue flowers. Far to the east, dark spruce trees marked the next biome. Northlight lay beyond them. The hunter's soul floated over Kai's hand, turning slowly. A thin red thread extended from it and pointed east. Ruth opened the old camp book. New writing had appeared after the recipe. The soul does not belong to the one who holds it. Carry it, and the slaughterer will walk toward you. Leave it, and he will walk toward the nearest claimed bed. Owen looked at the 8 villagers. We broke our beds. The next claimed beds are in Northlight. So if we drop the soul here, he goes ahead of us, Steve said. Kai tried to throw the black heart away. It returned to his inventory. Another line formed on the page. The bearer cannot refuse the road. Ruth read the words twice. That is why the camps were empty. Every group banished him. Someone took the soul, and the hunt started again. They kept moving because stopping sent him to a settlement. The wandering slaughterer, Owen said. It was a name from an old village story. Traders spoke of a burned man who appeared on roads after a place went silent. No wall held him. No ocean stopped him. People thought he wandered without purpose. The soul proved otherwise. He moved from home to home, following the players who tried to escape him. Kai closed his fist around the heart. Then he follows me. The rest of you take the villagers north. I will go south. Steve refused at once. You will not last one night alone. One night may be enough to get them away. Ruth pointed at the red thread. It still aimed east, not at Kai or the path behind them. The soul is not pointing to the hunter. It is pointing to something else. They followed it. The thread led to a ruined portal 200 blocks away. Half of the obsidian frame stood in a crater. Netherrack spread through the grass, and a gold block rested under crying obsidian. Someone had built a small stone shelter beside it. The door was missing. Inside, they found maps from many regions. Each had red roads drawn between villages. A book on the table listed names and dates. Brookfield, Stone Ford, Oak Ridge. Beneath them were settlements thousands of blocks apart, some older than any place Steve knew. The last entry was written by a player called Soren. We called him a wanderer because we did not understand. He does not choose a direction. He follows the idea of home. A bed, a compass tied to lodestone, a map marked with a house, even the promise that you will return. The soul finds that promise and leads him to it. If you carry no home in your mind, he follows only you. Ruth read the next line. I walked for 64 days. No village died while I kept moving. On the last night I slept. In the morning the slaughterer was gone. So was the town ahead. The rest of the pages had been cut out. Steve looked at the unfinished portal. One block in the frame carried a red handprint. Soren went through, he said. Owen shook his head. If the hunter can follow a river, it can follow a portal. But 8 blocks in the overworld become 1 in the nether. We can reach Northlight before sunset. They repaired the frame and lit it with a fire charge from the chest. Purple light filled the center. The red thread from the soul passed through. Steve went first. He entered the nether on a basalt ledge above a lava sea. A narrow bridge stretched east to a warped forest. Soren had built stone rails along both sides, and blue torches marked the path. The others came through one at a time. The villagers trembled and crowded against the portal frame. Kai entered last. The portal went black behind him. For 1 second, no one moved. Then a crack ran down the top obsidian block. The frame bent inward. Obsidian should not bend, but this did, closing like a mouth until every block pressed together. The way back was gone. On the basalt wall beside it, red words appeared. No home behind you. The soul's thread pointed across the bridge. They moved quickly. Steve and Owen led the villagers in a tight line. Ruth marked each turn on blank maps, though maps could not show the nether properly. Kai guarded the rear with the soul in one hand and the cross in the other. The first blue torch went out when they were halfway across the lava. Then the second went dark. The darkness followed from the ruined portal, one torch at a time. "Faster," Steve said. A phantom footstep sounded on the bridge behind Kai. He turned. Nothing was there. Another step came from the air above the lava. Then another came from beneath the bridge. One villager stopped, its head turned toward the lava sea. A crying woman stood on the surface below. Her white dress floated over the lava without burning. Long black hair covered her face. She lifted both arms toward the villager. "Come home," she called. The villager climbed onto the stone rail. Owen grabbed it, but the villager fought him. Two more turned toward the voice. Steve rang a handbell from the supply chest, breaking their attention. The woman looked up. Her face was Steve's face. She screamed. The sound struck the bridge like an explosion. Stone rails broke. 3 villagers fell into the lava. Kai caught one lid, but the other 2 disappeared below the surface. The hunter's soul beat once in his hand. The red thread became thicker. They reached the warped forest with 6 villagers. Behind them, the blue torches had all gone out. The forest offered cover, but every warped tree looked like a figure in the blue fog. Steve heard movement on both sides. Kai kept seeing the curved blade between trunks. Each time he aimed, the shape vanished. Ruth found Soren's next marker carved into a fungus stem. "Do not follow your own voice." A moment later, Owen called from ahead. "Steve, I found the tunnel." The real Owen stood beside Steve. They looked forward together. Another Owen waited near a black stone opening. It wore the same iron armor and carried the same axe. The only difference was its smile. Kai fired his crossbow. The copy bent backward, letting the bolt pass over it, then ran into the tunnel on all fours. "Not that tunnel," Ruth said. The soul's thread pointed directly into it. They searched for another route. The warped forest ended at a cliff, and the lava sea curved around both sides. Going back meant crossing the broken bridge. Sunset in the overworld was less than an hour away. Steve entered the tunnel first. The black stone passage descended in sharp turns. Small rooms opened on either side. Each contained a bed, though beds could not be used safely in the nether. Some were red, some white, some black. Signs above them carried village names from Soren's list. At the bottom stood a lodestone surrounded by broken compasses. The soul's thread ended there. Ruth picked up one compass. Its needle spun, then pointed at the black heart in Kai's hand. This was Soren's anchor. On the wall, Soren had written his final message. I tried to give the road a false home. The soul learned the lie. The slaughterer did not. Something heavy landed in the tunnel above them. Kai raised his cross. Sunset. The first bed exploded. Fire filled the upper room. A second explosion followed, then a third. The evil hunter was striking each bed as it came down, turning the tunnel into a chain of blasts. Owen searched the lodestone room. There has to be another exit. Steve broke Blackstone at the rear wall. Behind it was a one-block crawl space. He sent Ruth and the villagers through. Owen followed. Kai remained beside the lodestone. "Come on," Steve said. The hunter's soul would not pass through the opening. An unseen force pulled it back toward the lodestone. Kai tried again, but the heart stopped at the wall. The explosions came closer. "Break the lodestone," Steve said. Kai struck it with his pickaxe. Cracks appeared, then healed. The soul's red thread wrapped around his arm. "It chose an anchor," he said. "If we break it, the hunter goes to the nearest real home, Northlight. We will find another way." "There is no time." Kai handed Steve the cross. The soul remained fixed in his other hand. "Get them to the portal. I will keep it here until morning." Steve started to pull him toward the crawl space. Kai hit the wall lever. Blackstone pistons closed the opening between them. "Kai, keep walking." The last bed exploded. Through a small gap, Steve saw the evil hunter enter the lodestone room. Fire rolled over its burned skin. It looked at the soul, then at Kai. Kai fired his crossbow into the ceiling. Gravel fell and blocked Steve's view. The fight made almost no sound. One strike, a sharp breath, then the scrape of the curved blade across stone. Kai's name vanished from the player list. The hunter's soul appeared in Steve's inventory. His maximum health dropped by 1 heart. The red thread pushed through the crawl space and pointed after Ruth, Owen, and the villagers. Steve stood in the dark until the blade struck the piston wall. Then he obeyed Kai's final order and kept walking. The crawl space opened into an old fortress. Ruth waited at the first stair with tears on her face. Owen had found a second portal room beyond the blaze spawner. 4 villagers stood with him. "Where are the other 2?" Steve asked. Ruth looked toward the fortress hall. "Owen said you called them. They followed your voice." The real Owen stared at her. "I said no such thing." A villager screamed somewhere in the fortress. The sound ended with a bell. The 4 remaining villagers would not move. Steve rang his own bell, but they pressed against the fortress wall and shook their heads. Ruth traded bread to calm them. Owen blocked both ends of the corridor with iron bars. Steve opened the camp book. Its pages had changed again. "The bearer loses 1 heart when the road changes hands. Banish him, and he gives the heart back as a soul. Spend the soul or carry it. There is no third choice." The next page showed a round object made from the soul, glass, gold, and silver. It resembled a compass without a needle. "Blood compass," Ruth read from the label. "Maybe this can lead him somewhere that is not a home." "We need more silver," Owen said. Steve searched Kai's recovered items. Nothing had dropped where he died, yet 3 silver ingots now sat in Steve's inventory beside the black heart. Kai must have placed them in the soul's strange storage before the end. We need 2 more, Steve said. Ruth looked at the fortress chests. Then we search. They moved as a group. Steve carried the cross in one hand and his sword in the other. Owen placed blocks at every crossing. Ruth held the red map. Its line drew itself through the halls ahead of them. The map led to a dead end. A single chest stood against the wall. Inside were 2 silver ingots and a paper marked with Soren's name. Steve did not touch the silver. "It is too exact," he said. Owen examined the chest. "We need 2. It gives us 2. The hunter gives us what keeps us on the road." The corridor behind them went dark. Ruth picked up the ingots. "Then we use its gift against it." They returned to the portal room and crafted the blood compass. The hunter's soul filled its glass center. Red smoke formed a needle that pointed at Steve's chest, then Ruth, then Owen. It ignored the villagers. The old book added one instruction. Name a final road. The slaughterer will follow until the bearer rests. Steve turned the compass toward the unlit portal. The smoke needle pointed through it. "Northlight is still the final road in our minds," Ruth said. "That is where we promised to take them." "Then the hunter is already walking there," Owen answered. They lit the portal. The purple surface showed a snow-covered village on the other side. For a moment, Steve saw lanterns glowing and villagers moving between houses. Then a burned face filled the portal from the overworld side. The evil hunter was already at Northlight. Its curved blade broke through the purple light. The portal stretched around its arm. It could not step fully into the nether while the group remained on this side, but it struck at anything close. Owen pushed the villagers back. Ruth stared through the shifting image. The houses are burning. Northlight had been alive seconds earlier. Now its villagers ran between red blocks spreading across the snow. The hunter was attacking ahead of itself, present at both ends of the road. Steve raised the cross and waited for the arm to swing again. When the hunter reached through, he pressed the cross to its burned wrist. Lightning struck on both sides of the portal. The creature vanished. The purple surface went clear. A second hunter's soul floated where its arm had been, while the first remained trapped inside the blood compass. 2 hearts returned to Steve's maximum health. The item book opened on its own. 2 roads, 2 bodies, 1 walker. Ruth went through first. Steve followed. They emerged inside Northlight's stone gatehouse. Snow fell through holes in the roof. Half the village burned, but the attack had stopped with the banishment. 6 local villagers had survived inside the library. The group's 4 survivors joined them. Owen did not come through. Steve looked back into the portal. The fortress room was empty. "Owen," Ruth called. A hand touched the purple surface from the other side. Owen stepped through slowly. His armor was damaged, and a black cut ran across his face. "What happened?" Steve asked. The copy came back. Owen looked at the portal. "It tried to hold me there." Ruth raised the map. The red line stopped at Owen's feet. He saw it too. "I am not the copy." Steve aimed the cross at him. It gave no sparks. "See," Owen said, "that thing would react." The old book offered no answer. They let him pass, but Steve kept him in sight. Northlight's librarian knew Soren's story. His family had guarded a locked chest since the wandering player passed through years earlier. They believed it contained a cure. The librarian led Steve beneath the meeting house and opened a room lined with maps. At its center lay Soren's last journal. The first entry described the same burned creature. The next covered 64 days of travel. Soren had walked through deserts, jungles, frozen seas, and caves. Every sunset, the hunter returned. Each time Soren used the cross, he gained another soul and lost another piece of himself. Sometimes his reflection wore the hunter's face, sometimes his own voice called from behind him. The final pages explained the blood compass. It does not trap the hunter, it ties his path to yours. So long as you keep moving and claim no bed, he cannot choose another home. If you stop, the nearest promise becomes his road. Soren had planned to reach an end portal and throw the compass into the void. He never made it. His last line ended halfway across the page. The doppelganger knows the road because it is made from the part of you that wants to go home. When it replaces a friend, do not ask what it remembers, ask what it... The rest was blank. Ruth closed the journal. Soren found a stronghold south of here. His map shows the entrance beneath an ice lake. Steve understood the plan. Reach the end, carry the blood compass onto the outer islands, throw it into the void. If the hunter followed the compass rather than the nearest village, it might walk off the edge forever. That is more than 1,000 blocks, Owen said. The villagers will not survive the trip. They stay here, Steve answered. The hunter follows the compass. Owen shook his head. It attacked Northlight before the compass arrived. Because Northlight was our promised destination, now the stronghold is. And if you are wrong, then staying gives it all these people. They prepared before sunset. The librarian supplied food, boats, wool, and ender pearls. Northlight Smith repaired their armor. Ruth copied Soren's stronghold map. Steve held the loose hunter's soul and felt warmth return to his body, but he did not use it. The book warned that every soul consumed to heal him would weaken the blood compass. Owen built 3 snow shelters outside the south gate. We leave false beds here. If it chooses a home, maybe this delays it. Steve watched him place the last bed. What were the final words Kai said to you? Owen looked confused. Kai was with you. Before the crawl space, at the lodestone room. I could not hear him from the fortress. It was a truthful answer, but not the test Steve wanted. He looked at Soren's unfinished line. Do not ask what it remembers. Ask what it feared, wanted, could not do. Ruth came out of the gate. The red map line still ended at Owen. Take off your boots, she said. Owen stared at her. Why? You built those boots. Tell me what is under them. He stepped backward. Steve remembered Owen repairing gear during long trips. He always dyed the leather lining blue, even inside iron boots, because blue wool was the first block he had ever built with. Take them off, Steve said. Owen ran. He crossed the snow on all fours. His body stretched with each step. Iron armor sank into his skin. By the time he reached the nearest shelter, he had become a second Steve with a wide mouth. Ruth fired an arrow into its back. The copy did not slow. It jumped through the shelter wall and disappeared. The red line on the map moved south. The real Owen had never come through the portal. Steve went back to the gatehouse. Purple light still filled the frame. On the nether side, Owen's axe lay on the floor beside a dark stain. The hunter had taken him while Steve and Ruth were watching Northlight burn. The copy had walked beside them ever since. Sunset turned the snow red. Every false bed exploded. The blast knocked Steve and Ruth through the south gate. They landed beside the blood compass. Its smoke needle spun, then pointed toward the stronghold. On the wall above Northlight, the evil hunter appeared with the doppelganger crouched at its feet. The hunter pointed south. It was giving them a head start. Steve picked up the compass. He and Ruth ran across the snow, while the village bell began to ring behind them. They did not look back until Northlight was beyond sight. When they finally turned, the wandering slaughterer was walking after them, exactly 100 blocks away. The distance did not change while they moved. Steve counted landmarks. A frozen pond passed beneath their boats. They crossed it in less than a minute, yet the hunter remained beside the same spruce tree behind them until they reached the far bank. Then it appeared at the near edge of the pond, still 100 blocks away. It did not cross the land between. The road carried it forward in jumps. Ruth marked each sighting on her map. The red line grew under their feet. It only advances when we make progress. Then stopping should stop it. They tested the idea beneath a stone overhang. Steve held the blood compass while Ruth watched the path. For 10 minutes, the hunter stood motionless on the horizon. Then the sky darkened. The creature moved 1 block closer without taking a step. Every 10 seconds it moved another block. 99 blocks, 98, 97. It waits during the day, Ruth said. At night, stopping lets it close the distance. They kept walking. The snowstorm grew thick. Steve could no longer see the hunter, but its blades scraped behind them in a steady rhythm. Ruth followed Soren's map south across a ridge and into a field of packed ice. The stronghold mark lay under a round frozen lake beyond the field. At midnight, Steve's screen flickered. For 1 frame, Ruth walked beside him. For the next, a burned woman wore her armor. The image changed back and forth until Steve could not tell which one was real. "Move away from me," he said. Ruth stepped left. A second, Ruth stepped out from behind an ice spike on the right. Both carried maps. Both had the same tier in one boot. Both spoke at the same time. "Steve, do not let it split us." He remembered Soren's unfinished warning. The doppelganger was the part that wanted home. Memory would not expose it because it carried stolen memory. Steve drew his sword. "We are not going to the stronghold. We are returning to Northlight." The Ruth on the left looked at the hunter behind them. "That will kill everyone." The Ruth on the right smiled. "Good. I am tired of this road." Steve struck the one on the right. Its body broke into red strips that crawled over the ice. The real Ruth fired burning arrows into them until nothing remained. "That is what Soren meant," she said. "Ask what it wants. The copy always wants the road to end." The delay had cost them. The hunter stood 60 blocks away. They ran across the lake. Ruth found the stronghold directly beneath its center by throwing an ender pearl and watching it fall onto the ice. Steve broke a hole, placed a door for air, and dug down through water and stone. They entered the stronghold library near morning. Books covered 2 floors. Cobwebs filled the corners. Soren's blue torches marked a route through an iron door toward the portal room. He had reached the stronghold after all. His body lay beside the end portal. Only bones and rusted armor remained. One hand held a broken cross. The other pointed toward a message carved into the frame. The void is not empty. 11 eyes filled the portal frame. The 12th slot was bare. Soren's final eye rested on the floor beneath his hand. Ruth placed it. The portal opened with a low roar. The iron door behind them bent inward. The hunter had reached the stronghold. Steve looked at Soren's bones. He opened the portal and chose not to enter, because he learned the void would not stop it. Ruth picked up the broken cross, but he had already lost his group. We still have a chance to learn what is there. The iron door tore free. They jumped into the end. Steve landed on an obsidian platform inside the main island. The dragon was long dead. Exit portals stood open, and bridges stretched towards several gateways. Ruth appeared beside him. For a moment the blood compass went still. Then the red smoke needle pointed upward. The evil hunter fell out of the black sky. It struck the obsidian platform hard enough to crack it. Steve and Ruth ran toward the nearest gateway. The hunter climbed from the crater and followed. Endermen moved out of its path. Those too slow were cut once and vanished without dropping pearls. Steve reached the gateway and threw a pearl through purple light took him. He landed on an outer island beside a chorus forest. Ruth arrived 1 second later. The hunter appeared between them without using the gateway. Ruth struck it with Soren's broken cross. The item flashed, but no lightning came. Steve used their working cross. White light threw the hunter backward, yet it remained in the world. The blood compass shielded it from full banishment. The soul inside the compass is holding it here, Ruth said. Steve threw the compass toward the void. It sailed beyond the island edge. The hunter turned and walked after it. Red blocks formed beneath its feet in empty space. For one hopeful second, the plan seemed to work. Then the compass stopped falling. It floated over the void, pulled itself free from the glass center, and returned to Steve's hand. The red road curved back toward the island. The hunter turned with it. The words on Soren's stronghold frame were not a warning about another monster. They meant that the hunter could build a road even where no blocks existed. Ruth ran into the chorus forest. The end cities have anvils. If the compass follows a named road, we give it a name that is not a place. They used ender pearls to cross the gaps. The hunter took no shortcuts. Now it walked behind them over a red bridge, and the distance slowly closed. By the time Steve saw an end city rising from the next island, the creature was 30 blocks away. They climbed the Purple Tower. Shulker shots lifted Steve from the stairs. Ruth broke the shells with arrows. At the 3rd floor, they found an anvil beside a chest. Steve placed the blood compass on it. The name field showed one word, home. He erased it. The tower shook. The hunter was climbing the outside wall. "What do we call it?" Steve asked. Ruth looked at the red map, the broken villages, and the line that never ended. A person, not a destination. Steve typed his own name. The anvil struck once. The blood compass changed. The glass darkened, and the red smoke needle pointed only at Steve. No matter where he turned it, the needle stayed fixed on his chest. The hunter broke through the purple wall. Ruth fired an arrow at its coal eye. Steve raised the cross and sent white light across the room. The creature staggered but did not vanish. It swung the curved blade. Ruth blocked with Soren's broken cross. The blade cut through it and opened her chest plate. She fell against the window with one heart left. Steve drew his diamond sword and attacked, though he knew it could not cause damage. The hunter caught the blade and snapped it. Its other hand reached for the compass. The loose hunter's soul still floated in Steve's inventory. He took it out and pressed it into the cross. The metal turned red hot. White cracks crossed its surface. When Steve fired again, lightning struck the end city from the empty sky. The hunter flew through the broken window. For the first time, its red road disappeared. It fell toward the void, body breaking into black smoke. Ruth smiled weakly. That looked final. The old camp book opened in Steve's inventory. Sunset has no meaning here. The walk returns in 100 heartbeats. Ruth read the message. Of course, that would have been too easy. The nearest end ship held 2 healing potions and an elytra. They crossed to it before the hunter returned. Steve gave both potions to Ruth, but her missing hearts did not recover. The blade had damaged her maximum health, the same way it had damaged Kai. The ship's brewing stand held one last silver ingot. Ruth used it to repair the cross as much as she could. The item remained cracked. "There is only enough power for one more strike," she said. Below the ship, red blocks began building upward from the void. The hunter was returning. Steve put on the elytra. There was only one set. "I can carry you." Not far enough. Ruth gave him her maps and Soren's journal. "The compass is named for you now. That means Northlight is safe unless you call another place home. We both go back through the gateway. It will catch us on the island." Steve refused to leave her. Ruth placed the last firework rockets in his hand, then walked to the ship's stern. The red staircase reached the deck. The hunter climbed over the rail. Ruth held the cracked cross. "I spent my whole life drawing roads for other people. I know where this one has to go." She fired the cross at the blocks beneath the hunter. Lightning broke the red staircase. The creature dropped, but its claw caught the edge of the ship. Ruth struck the hand with an axe. The hunter caught her leg. Steve grabbed her arms. "Let go," she said. "No. If it takes the compass, every road becomes its road again." The ship tilted over the broken island. Steve's elytra opened in the wind. Ruth released his hands. She and the hunter fell together. The creature tried to climb over her, but she locked both arms around its burned chest. They disappeared into the black below. Ruth's name vanished from the player list. Steve fired a rocket and flew. He crossed 3 islands before landing beside a gateway. The blood compass pointed at his chest. No red road followed. No blade scraped behind him. He returned to the main island and entered the exit portal alone. The overworld placed him at the last world spawn, a plain west of Oak Ridge. Morning light covered the grass. His old bed had been broken, so the world had no closer place to send him. He did not return to Northlight. For 10 days, no hunter appeared. Steve walked south, away from every marked settlement. He crossed forests during the day and plains at night. He slept nowhere. He did not build doors, chests, or farms. Every block he placed he broke before leaving. On the 11th sunset, the blood compass became warm. Far behind him, a red figure appeared on the road. Ruth's sacrifice had delayed the walker, not ended it. The creature moved more slowly now, and white cracks covered its arms, but it still carried the curved blade. It followed Steve because the compass carried his name. Steve kept walking. Days became weeks. He passed ruined portals, temples, caves, and oceans. When he saw village smoke ahead, he turned before the place loaded. When a trader approached, Steve gave him maps with red warnings and sent him away. He learned how long he could stop during daylight and how much distance the hunter gained each night. Once he found a child villager alone in a dark oak forest. A broken trading cart lay beside the road, and pillager arrows covered the trees. The child followed Steve at once. He knew the nearest village could not be far. He also knew that leading the child there would put the hunter on the same road. Steve built a boat and placed the child inside. He followed a river west until he saw lanterns through the rain. The blood compass began to shake. The idea of safety ahead was already becoming a promise, and the creature behind him could feel it. At the next bend, Steve stopped the boat. He placed a water channel that carried it downstream, then stepped onto the eastern bank. The child reached toward him, making the small, worried sound villagers made when they could not find a bed. "Keep going," Steve said. He pushed the boat into the current and walked east without watching it reach the lanterns. The compass cooled behind him. The hunter changed direction and followed Steve instead of the river. The next morning, an empty boat floated past. Inside was a loaf of bread and a green wool block. Steve understood. The child had reached home, and someone in the village had sent thanks back upstream. He carried the wool for one day. By evening, the blood compass had begun pointing west whenever he thought about the child. Even a gift could become a thread leading home. Steve placed the wool on a high branch where the sunrise touched it, then continued east. The compass settled against his chest, and the scraping blade behind him turned away from the river. After that, Steve accepted no keepsakes. He kept Ruth's maps, Kai's cross, and Soren's journal, because they belonged to the road itself. Everything else he used and left behind. He never claimed a bed. He never marked a house on a map. He never said he would return. Northlight survived. Traders later spoke of a rebuilt wall, 10 villagers, and a library that kept 4 books under glass. Oakridge stayed empty, but grass covered the burned fields. People stopped using the old road between them. They began seeing Steve on distant hills. Sometimes he wore an elytra. Sometimes he moved by boat or minecart. A red man always followed at the edge of sight, never close enough to strike and never far enough to lose. Villagers placed food in barrels along empty paths, then left before Steve arrived. He took only what he needed and broke each barrel so it could not become part of a home. The story changed as it spread. Some called the red creature the wandering slaughterer. Others gave that name to Steve, the lone player who walked through storms and darkness, with a cursed compass against his chest. Steve did not care which one they meant. On the 300th night, he reached a wide desert with no settlement on any map. The moon rose over flat sand. Steve stopped on a dune and looked back. The evil hunter stood 100 blocks away. Its burned head leaned to one side. White cracks glowed across its chest. For the first time since Oakridge, it lowered the blade and spoke. "Home?" it asked. Steve looked east. The desert continued beyond the loaded land. "No," he said. He turned toward the sunrise and began walking again. Behind him, the wandering slaughterer lifted its blade and followed. while every village in the world slept through the night unharmed.